Hey friend, thanks for listening. We're all about equipping you to pursue real friendships. You were not created to be alone because life is just better with real friends. Let's get started. Hey friend, welcome back. Thanks for listening. Ben, what are we talking about today?
We have got a spicy topic at hand today. Friendship with benefits, or friends with benefits. Why are we talking about it, Lucas?
Because everyone's searching about it.
Yeah,
Y'all are asking.
We did. There are people who are searching for the answer to, is it okay to have friends with benefits? How do I do friendship with benefits?
Yep.
All that kind of stuff. So, hot topic. It actually made me think of this conversation I had with a friend of mine a couple years ago. He was a guy. When I met him, he wasn't a Christian. He decided he was going to read through a Bible when he had a couple weeks of free time, read the whole Bible in like a week and a half, ended up coming to Jesus as a result of that. And
well, hold on.
Yeah.
He read the whole
he
Bible.
read the whole Bible in,
A
I think
week?
it was like 6 days, 7 days, something like that.
He can read.
He can read.
He can read.
That's
Wow.
true. Yeah. But anyways, he became a Christian. I got to know him. I was discipling him a little bit, and he was engaged, ended up breaking off the engagement with this gal because she was not a Christian. And as he was reading his Bible, he was like, well, I should not be in a relationship. Shouldn't be marrying someone who doesn't love Jesus. Long story short, she ended up coming to know Jesus. They got back together, started dating. Got engaged, and they were going to move in together. And him and I had some conversations about that. I forget if he asked me or if I brought the topic up, but similar scenario. They were engaged, but they were functioning in this kind of friends with benefits mode, moving in together and stuff. So hot topic. That was 4 or 5 years ago, but it's a big topic, man. So big questions and important to answer.
Yeah, I think let's split it 3 ways. So I think first, what do we mean by friendship?
Mm-hmm.
A friends with benefit. What do we mean by that? And is it? Hey, I think the world's view is someone that you're casually having sex with.
That would be the common definition
yeah.
of that phrase.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the second thing, from a biblical perspective, we can answer this pretty easy, right? So it's like, we know that sex outside of marriage is wrong and damaging, right? And the third thing I would say is we have to go deeper, right? Let's say someone that, how does someone that's friends with benefit look at friendships, look at humans, look at a man and a woman, humanity? How do they look at sex too,
Yeah.
So I think we have to go a little bit deeper.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's often the case with topics like this where there's controversy or lots of people asking questions. Usually someone asks the question and we answer it at this level, when really what we need to do is go 1 or 2 levels deeper and say, okay, what are the assumptions that are taking place behind this? I'm going to jump down in our notes a little bit here. We do take some time to plan out what we're going to talk about here beforehand. I was doing some online research, digging around, looking for kind of is there any scientific research that's been done on the positive or negative benefits or costs of friendship with benefits. And it was interesting. A lot of the things I read were generally positive. Like there was a couple editorials in Psychology Today that were talking about friendship with benefits being this positive thing because you can get your sexual needs met without much cost or commitment. But it was interesting as most of these articles that I read, and I wouldn't say I did a scientific research survey. I was just spent about an hour or two digging through some stuff on the interwebs, looking at various journals and other things like that. And most of them were positive. But then as you read further in these studies, it was often came down to, they were like, well, it works well, friends with benefits works well. So long as you're really clear about what are the boundaries, or saying, hey, we're not committing to anything. And then this is one of the things that I came across that I think did a good job summarizing what showed up in several different things that I was looking at. So they said that there was a 2-year-long study that tracked about 190 people who were in friendship with benefit style relationships. So they were people who were friends but were having sex together, no commitment beyond that. And here's what this summary of this study said. So they found that individuals involved in friends with benefits relationships experienced increased levels of emotional stress and confusion. While the relationships usually start with clear mutual agreement and rules, these boundaries often become blurred over time, leading to misunderstandings and emotional turmoil. Participants reported feelings of jealousy, anxiety, uncertainty about the status and future of their relationships. And then another fascinating finding was that these relationships seldom evolve into committed partnerships. So that was someone summarizing that study, and then that just kind of, I think, captured what I saw. So it was interesting, like that Psychology Today editorial and a couple other things I read started out positive, moved to kind of qualifying everything they're saying. So I see something like that and I say, man, these people are coming with some very clear assumptions about what it means to be human, about what sex is and is not, about what relationships are and are not. So I think let's talk a little bit about that. One, I think it makes some pretty significant assumptions about sex, and that, like, man, we can just have this, that can be such a thing as casual sex that doesn't lead to involvement or entanglement between two people. And even right in those articles you go on, you realize, oh man, actually, for the vast majority of people in those relationships, they discover over time, oh, well, I guess I'm actually getting kind of jealous that this person is, we're just friends. We're casual as friends with benefits. So technically I can go have other friends with benefits, right?
If you can say, let's just have sex and nothing more.
Yeah.
And you can get away with that and you can do it again and again. You really need to check your heart. You really need to check yourself. And
for sure.
You are numb to the numb, So it's it's impossible. As humans, that's impossible. I can have sex with this person and not have any emotionally attached to this, nothing, you know? And that's just, if you get to that point, that's hard.
Yeah, for sure. And there's also some assumptions there about what makes a healthy relationship with someone, what makes a healthy friendship. And we'll talk in future episodes about what we mean by a real friendship. But let's do this. Let's look a little bit. We touched on some scientific stuff.
Yep.
What does the Bible say about? Let's talk about sex specifically.
Yeah. Well, again, and before we do that, we have to clear up something quick. We are not here to shame anyone. Mm-hmm. We believe God's grace is enough, that He could set you free from any sin. We believe that. Fixing your eyes on Him, He'll set you free from anything, right? Yeah. And even for me, I've lived this life. I've lived this life of pursuing the world like no tomorrow. The bar, bringing girls home. I've done all these things, and it brings no life. So I'm also coming from that perspective of saying it gives you no life. All it does, it takes from you and it hurts you.
Yeah, it might be short-term pleasure, but the long-term cost is greater than the short-term benefit.
Absolutely. Yeah. And from a Bible perspective, right, from a biblical perspective, God sets pretty clear boundary around sex.
Yeah.
It's pretty clear, we know, even I looked at, I was listening to this sermon. It was a beautiful sermon, and he kind of explained it in depth. And a lot of my notes I got from the sermon. Mm-hmm. And like, you look at society now, right? Even society, most of all society sets boundary around sex. In America, it's consent and age. Yeah. We know that, right? In the Bible, it's a covenant, right?
Yeah.
It's between a man and a wife, right? And it's a covenant that is, it's someone saying that, hey, I want all of you. Not just your body. I want all of you. I want your thoughts. I want your mind. I want your heart. I want all of you.
And not just that I want all of you, is that I'm committing all of me to you as well. Exactly. So it's a mutual agreement.
And as we commit to each other for our entire lives, like as we commit, sex is a extension of that. It's a gift from God, and you look at the Song of Solomon, chapter 4. It is. The Bible's not prude. That's one of the sermon was really clear about that. The Bible's not prude about sex. Like, it was pretty clear. It's talking about
graphic descriptions there in Song of Solomon.
Yeah, and it's talking about these newlywed, and man, how they were just, it's a beautiful image though too. Mm-hmm. Like, this is beautiful gift. This newlywed was basically exploring each other's body, and such a what they used a metaphor as they were talking to this newlywed. It's a garden that's protected, that has exotic fruits, and nurtures you. It's beautiful, right? And he uses that metaphor, and it's such a beautiful thing. But we've taken that outside of bed. We've taken sex outside of bedrooms. We've taken sex outside of marriage. And all we've done. I mean, we have. He said that it's fast food now. Sex is fast food. And sex is a gift. It's a gift from God. And look at through the Bible. Money and sex.
Big topics.
Huge topics. and at the end of Solomon says, eat, friend, drink, and be drunk with love. Like as these two newlywed they're basically having sex.
Yeah.
And it's such a beautiful image though too, but it does not look like that now, especially outside of marriage. It does not look like that. So.
Yeah. And I mean, I know you're single, you haven't been married. I've been married 11 years.
Yep.
And there's something that is so, like the quote I read earlier from kind of summarizing those findings. So many people are in relationships, even in the context of dating relationships with someone of the opposite sex, where you're involved, you're sexually active. There's this level of pressure or anxiety that's there because you don't know, you can't be confident in the modern world that, I'm committed to this person, person is committed to me. There's this sense in which there's like, well, if this thing happens, they might dip. And that's a scary thing, to be, and the picture biblically of the space where sex is intended is exactly as you're describing. It's intended to be something that takes place in the context of a covenantal relationship where you're saying we're fully committed to each other, regardless of what comes. And it's an overflow of that level of knownness and intimacy that the sexual act comes. And that's really going back to the bigger picture of what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be relationally created in the image of God, like Genesis talks about, where we're created male and female in the image of God. And central to that is a relationship. We're created to be relationally involved and connected to other people. And like 1 Corinthians, Paul lays out, or Jesus is the prime example of this, where he says, here's what relating to someone else, to another human, looks like. It looks like, Jesus says, things like, this is what real love is. It's the one who lays down their life for the sake of their friends. And oftentimes in the context of these relationships where it's friendship with benefits, or you can expand it out even beyond that to any kind of relationship, take sex out of the picture and say, okay, I'm using these relationships for my benefit. I'm going to become friends with this person because they're going to open these doors for me career-wise or whatever. That's the exact inverse of what we're called to as followers of Jesus, to say, I'm actually here to seek your good, not to seek my own benefit. Instead, I'm going to seek your benefit.
And Paul talks about that in 2 Corinthians too. Yeah. It's like, that's the Christian life. Mm-hmm. Like that's it right there. It's like, man, how do I outserve this person? How do I love this person? Yeah. That's what Jesus did for us. He came down to this earth, and not to be served, like you said, to serve us by going on that cross and dying for all of our sins,
Yeah.
And I think we have to look, man, you're 100% right. Take that outside of sex. Now let's look at just other things, let's stop talking about sex. Now let's look at other relationships, right?
Yeah.
From a career perspective, there's a good in there. Like, hey, I know this person because they can help me and I can help them, right?
Yep.
But we've taken that outside of our career. We've taken that outside of the workforce, that we treat everyone else like that. I know you because you're a benefit to me.
Yeah.
And if you don't give me this benefit, you're not worth my time.
Peace.
Yeah. We're not friends, And I think that's just sad, So
yeah, we're not created to function primarily transactionally in relationships. Right? The reality is there's going to be transactions that take place in relational contexts.
Yep.
But real friendship is not meant to be transactional. It's meant to be gracious, loving, kind, and the idea like Philippians 2, I'll just read this quote. Philippians 2, Paul lays out this idea that we're meant to imitate Christ. And he says, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves, looking not only to your own interests, but to the interests of others. And so, man, I would say, like, even you take away, people will hear biblical stuff on sex and say, oh, it's reserved for marriage, and be like, that's whatever. We don't like that. We don't like those. I think, you got to deal with that. The Bible, I'd say, is God's word, and I think God knows what he's talking about when he talks about the context of sex. But even set that aside and ask yourself the question of, man, am I in my relationships, whether it's a friends with benefits in the popular lingo or just casual other friendship relationships, am I coming with a mindset of what's the benefit for me? Or am I coming with what we're invited to by Jesus and by Paul and by the biblical narrative to say, what good can I do for the person in front of me? Can I seek their good rather than seeking my own benefit?
Yeah. We live in a world that is, how do I get noticed? And we have this belonging that we want to fill with everything that we see in front of us. And the things that we can see, it can't fill it, Yeah. And we know only who can, the only person that can is Jesus, So.
Yep. Yeah, man. So just, I would encourage any of you listening, if you're in a friends with benefit kind of relationship, ask yourself that question and ask yourself, is that how I want to operate in my life? Do I want to be the kind of person who's always looking out for what I can get? Or do I want to be the kind of person who's always looking for what can I give to someone else? Because odds are, in the friends with benefits context, at least one, maybe both of y'all in the relationship, or it's 2024, maybe there's 3 people in a friends with benefits relationship. Who knows what's going on out there? Yeah. You got to ask yourself, man, is that the way I'm operating in this relationship, is that going to lead to the most good for me and the people around me?
And is it not heavy too? Is it not weighing you down at all? Is it not something that you're thinking about as you're driving? That, man, even when I lived that life, and the Lord's still working in me, and it's just the images, I'm just like, you look at a girl like she's a piece of meat, it's like,
what can I get out of that?
Yeah, what can I get out of that? Or even in a career perspective, and especially in the startup space, it's like, who do you know it's going to get you farther too, right? Whether it's raising capital, whether it's getting new clients, it's like, oh, this guy, everyone's known by this guy, so that means he's doing well. And most of the time, people that's not knowing that person. We even forgot the definition of like, oh, do I really know that person? That's not knowing a person right there. That's more than, again, there's a good with, working with someone else.
Yep.
But you have to ask that question that you asked. Like, am I seeking for my own benefit for this relationship with any types of relationship? Am I seeking my own good instead of, man, how can I seek the good of this person? How can I serve this person? You have to ask that question. Especially, and we're talking if you're a Christian. If you're not a Christian, we're not talking to you about this at all. But if you are a Christian, you have to answer that question. Yeah. So, I'm not saying you have to do anything, but seriously, ask yourself that question.
Yeah.
So
do it. I think that's all we got for this session.
All right.
We'll be back in soon.
All right. We'll see you next week, friend. We love you. And have a good day. Bye.